Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Mary DuCharme, founder of Natural Transitions Consulting. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all who have joined today's webinar, especially fellow HRSA recipients and those from our Southwest region. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous people. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community service. Since 2011, the Southwest Telehealth Resource Center has partnered with the Arizona Telemedicine Program to bring you over 185 informative webinars. As you joined the webinar today, your microphone was muted. Please use the chat function of Zoom to ask questions. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to access on demand from our website at telemedicine.arizona.edu/webinars/previous. The URL is listed on this slide, and we also post the URL in the chat. It is my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. Mary DuCharme is founder and president of Natural Transitions Consulting. Ms. DuCharme brings over 20 years of occupational therapy experience focusing on home health, durable medical equipment, residential, group homes, schools, and traumatic brain injury, both inpatient and outpatient, and support. She also has 15 years engineering experience, both bioengineering and auto industry. William Medina is Leads Plus advisor at City University of New York, Bronx Community College. Mr. Medina oversees the assistive technology at Bronx Community College and is a Lighthouse Guild Saturday Youth Transition Program technology instructor. He has presented with Lehman College at the CUNY Accessibility Conference at John Jay College and served as panelist at Columbia University Assistive Tech Seminar at Lehman College on the Addressing the Needs of a Diverse Learning Community and at Lehman College Bronx Disability Employment Expo. And thirdly, Ken Smith II is founder and Chief Experience Officer, or CXO, for NextGenAT. Mr. Smith facilitated the development and growth of 2 remote support and assistive technology vendors. He sits on the Ohio Remote Supports Waiver Revision Committee and serves as a board member for PAR Ohio, standing for Professionals, Advocates, and Resources. He is the founder of Ability Tech, an assistive technology consulting firm, and also co-founded NextGenAT, a turnkey remote support platform developed for the local provider agency. Hi, this is Mary DuCharme, occupational therapist, assistive technology professional, and a background in bioengineering. Today, our learning objectives will include to learn about RESNA. RESNA stands for Rehab Engineering Society of North America, and it has 2 free special interest groups if you want to be involved and kind of be a guest in it before you join. And the 2 free and special interests is the international group serving underserved areas, and Posture 24/7, which addresses posture not only during the day, but at night to reduce scoliosis. RESNA has several standardization groups. I'm on the committee for cognitive accessibility, and the other committees include wheelchairs, golf carts, wheelchair and transportation, seating and positioning, and surfaces. And so there's several committees. And then I'm also going to talk about the new assistive technology products and services and medical software useful for 3 non-conflictual parties on group 3 wheelchairs. And on our second learning objectives, we're going to talk about smart home devices and how they can be applied and help with medical monitoring. And third, learn about remote support systems for people with intellectual disabilities. Sensors are positioned in the client's home, so previously dependent clients can be monitored remotely to be safe. I'm honored to be able to discuss the current area of assistive technology with the Arizona telemedicine program. Thank you very much for inviting me. I educate service providers. It's a diverse group, including direct care providers, education, rehabilitation providers, advocacy clients, humanitarian NGOs, and durable medical equipment suppliers. Here's a picture of the virtual classroom, which is COVID related, and assistive technology got a big push in the education arena from the public health emergency. But it's only one performance area. The other performance areas include work, community, and home. Assistive technology devices are devices that are used when an individual cannot complete an activity independently, but can be modified independent with the assistive technology. The assistive technology devices are reusable. They're not disposable. Hold on a minute. I teach an assistive technology fundamentals course. RESNA also teaches it, and other DME companies teach it to prepare you for the ATP, to help prepare you for the ATP certification test. The ATP certification is now worldwide. It's recognized worldwide because RESNA took out all the legislation and funding was already taken out. So there's no legislation questions and no funding questions on the ATP certification test. So it can be recognized worldwide. My reference was Joe McKnight, who was heavily involved with RESNA, and he works for Senior Mobility Aids. The ATP implementation plan has 5 broad areas that are broken down into sequential steps of the plan. Assessment of need includes the HAT model, which means human activity assistive technology model with a contextual environment of being the work area, the community, home, and education. We take in the intake involves collecting the stakeholders in it's a client-focused model, and it takes it includes all stakeholders, and it includes therapy evaluations like from the physical therapist or an occupational therapist. Also the physician, the primary care physician is usually notified if insurance funding is required, and also for certain types of wheelchairs. Development, then we develop the intervention strategy, which includes procurement, no, development. That is when you're working with the stakeholders and trying to find the exact need and trial and error. You can trial equipment. Each state has an agency statewide that you can consult with or borrow equipment from, like a loaning library. And Also, several DME companies have wheelchairs or equipment available, bath equipment. You can't really trial that, but we try to trial as many as we can, and kind of look at the what's available in the environment and kind of merge that inclusively if we can, especially with education, and use past experiences of use and try to develop from there. The implementation involves procurement and assembly of the assistive technology devices and drafting out a safety plan and scheduling a follow-up for the evaluation of intervention, which includes the client. It's very client-focused model, and the stakeholders that need to know how to use the equipment safely, how to maintain it, and when to call when there are problems, and a follow-up calendar. Professional conduct, of course, is outlined in the RESNA website. And I just wanted to point out that if you have something that you think is out of your wheelhouse, like perhaps sensory impairment, such as hearing and vision, you refer to another professional for that issue. Okay, I'm going to discuss class 3 wheelchairs. They're also called group 3. There was a expert panel in 2006 that CMS hired and to recategorize all the wheelchairs. Actually, in this one article I read, it's 4 groups, but there are actually 6 groups. The first group is very basic power wheelchair used in assisted living facilities and institutions, not designed for home use. There are only 29 of those, 29 different models. And the group 2 wheelchairs there are 366 models, and those are used mostly in the home or on occasional use, not all the time. Group 3 wheelchairs are used 12 to 18 hours in basically when the client is out of bed, the client is using that wheelchair. And group 4 wheelchairs are for uneven terrain. Also, it includes bariatric, so heavy duty and extra heavy duty wheelchairs. Those are power wheels. These are all power wheelchairs. And then group 5 is, I can't remember what group 5 is, but group 6 is the pediatric wheelchairs with a growth kit, so that you can change as a person grows. You can re-engineer it and change it. But the 3-party collaborative intervention is required on all class 3 wheelchairs. Oh, the other one I wanted to mention was the ultralight wheelchairs, which are for active wheelchair users. That's K5, yeah. But those are manual wheelchairs, but complex manual wheelchairs, and some of them are made of titanium, so they easily get into the car. Okay, and on class 3 wheelchairs, you have to have a ramp or a lift to get it into the car. On class 2 wheelchairs, some of them can be put in the boot of the car. Class 2 wheelchairs also, some of them have a basic seating mobility power function, such as recline or tilt and space. Tilt and space is used for pressure relief, and it's basically you tilt the entire chair assembly so that the back isn't reclined, but the entire assembly reclined. It is tilted. And it's used for pressure relief and also to reduce spasticity. The recline function is used for hygiene and bladder control, but the recline function can cause stress on the skin. So, so you have to balance that out. The three-party collaborative intervention is required on class 3 and the class 2 that have the seating mobility power options. And that includes the DME vendor, which is required that an ATP is on staff, a physician with a face-to-face exam, and I have this software here, PMDRX, that will help the physician use that software so to reduce denials and not to have to repeat this all over again in a therapist evaluation, all non-conflictual. RESNA also certifies seating and mobility, which is an advanced certification after the ATP, and then rehab engineering technology providers. CRT stands for complex rehab technology, where so generally when you have a class 3 wheelchair, it is you have a neurological condition or a congenital skeletal condition or myopathy, and it's complex. You can also have rheumatoid arthritis or multiple amputees, but it's a complex situation. There are two associations involved, NERTS and NCART. NERTS is for the suppliers and NCART is for the clinicians. And they're heavily, Unite for CRT is also a support group that started this year for people with CRT to get together once a month. And that is under NERTS umbrella. And these two agencies are heavily involved with legislation. Today, we had an ask with Congress. We had 42 out of 50 states involved. And I personally had 6 representatives, and 3 from West Virginia and 3 from Montana. And the ask, we had 3 asks. The first ask was seat elevation and standing option on that CMS would provide reimbursability, because it's both for active reach and for standing. Typically, you'd had another device that was called a stander, and you would have to transfer. Before, you would have to transfer from that wheelchair to the stander and then transfer back. So typically that was only done once a day. Well, if the stander is on the wheelchair, it can be done several times a day, increasing weight bearing and bodily function. The second ask was to help the suppliers, especially during COVID. They have extra costs and there's a competitive bid, and that's how they get paid. So we were trying to reduce the competitive bid so that the suppliers are getting more payment because we're losing suppliers. And the third ask is for the occupational therapists and physical therapists to permanently be able to use Telenet for assistive technology evaluations, which is allowed during the public emergency. And finally, I'm going to mention medical wearables, such as activity trackers, pacemakers, Holter monitors. Sky's the limit, and collecting the data. And when the person does a Telenet conversation with the physician, you need a secure download, and that's called blockchain for HIPAA compliance and for confidentiality. And then biometrics is a personal identification, which includes fingerprint, facial recognition, etc., for further safety. And that's called the Holy Trinity, and more can be learned on the Splash link. Now I'm going to introduce William Medina, Assistant Director of Assistive Technology at Bronx CUNY, and he is going to discuss smart home services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, for that presentation. And good afternoon, everybody. As Mary said, my name is William Medina. I manage the assistive technology at Bronx Community College, aside from running a few other programs. And I want to apologize ahead of time. My camera is currently off because I am at work. It's a college campus, and students might be in my frame. I'm really excited about this topic because it's helping individuals with disabilities live at home independently. So as far as smart homes and smart devices, there are lots of examples. There are wearables, there are safety devices, smart speakers and smart displays, like most popular Google Home set of products, Amazon Echo or Alexa set of products. And they help individuals create areas to hang out, chill out, for leisure time, and help them communicate with the world. So as far as wearables go, the most popular device out there is probably the Apple Watch. Although it's created for conventional use, it definitely is capable of loading up apps that will help people with disabilities, which we'll talk a little bit about later. There are also devices such as medical monitors that help healthcare providers monitor patients and clients. For example, most recently, my wife, not too long ago, she noticed an irregular heartbeat. So after communicating with her doctor had her wear a heart monitor, which was paired with a smartphone, which the doctor also provided, for 72 hours. It allowed the doctor to monitor her heart for 72 hours, and her life was not disrupted, which was very convenient. There are certain apps, such as Habit Aware, which help individuals deal with their habits. For example, for individuals that are constantly pulling or twirling their hair, it could notify them that they're doing it, because often individuals don't notice they're doing it, and hopefully that'll serve as a deterrent from doing it again. There are certain headphones out there that have built-in sensors that allow them to keep track of the distance that you've walked or run, and also monitor your heartbeat. Aside from smart devices as those that I just spoke of, there are also devices that are good for safety. For example, modern alarm systems are obviously, they could detect when a door or a window is open and closed, but they could also notify a third party concerning it. And it could also have audible sounds to allow the individual at home know that a door or window was opened or closed, which is very useful for individuals that are a run risk. There are sensors for beds that will detect the smallest amount of moisture and could either notify the person that's sleeping that they're about to wet the bed, and hopefully they'll wake up and go use the bathroom, or notify a third party, which they could are then able to come into the room and assist the person in bed. There are smart doorbells out there. For example, most popular right now is Amazon's Ring doorbells and the Nest Hello doorbells, which have built-in cameras, built-in microphones, built-in speakers. They could, when the doorbell is rung, they could notify the individuals at home, notify a third party, and notify users remotely through their smartphone, and then they're able to communicate with whoever's at the door through their smartphone or another device like a smart display, and then decide whether they're going to let the individual in or not. And in certain situations, if you have a smart lock, you can also unlock the door and just let the individual in. You can strategically place cameras both around the home and inside the home, which is very useful when you have clients that are run risk, so you could stay aware of what's going on in the home. There are also sensory beds. Probably the most popular right now is one of the models of the sleep number bed, which could detect restlessness, and depending on the smart devices that are at home through if this then that technology, it could either turn off the lights if the lights are still on, change the thermostat to a more comfortable temperature, play some sounds on a smart speaker to calm them. And then we also have smart lighting. The most popular product out is probably Philips, the Philips Hue set of products, which you could definitely turn on and off, like just like any other conventional light bulb, but you could also turn them on and off remotely if you so wish. You could set them on a timer to turn on or off at a certain time. For example, in my home, the lights in my room are set to brighten slowly. Starts brightening slowly 30 minutes before the alarm goes off, and by the time the alarm goes off, the bulbs are at full brightness, and hopefully it wakes me up. It doesn't always work. And you can also set them up with to respond to other devices or sensors. For example, have the porch lights and the foyer lights turn on when a car pulls up in the driveway, or even have certain motion detectors around the house, maybe in a dark hallway or along some steps, and have it turn on the lights when it detects a person walking, which will help prevent accidents. And of course, a lot of devices are used commonly for leisure today. For example, streaming devices such as the Google Chromecast set of devices or the Amazon Fire Stick set of devices, which of course you could use it to stream things like Netflix, HBO Max, and so on and so forth. But you could also control it in conventional ways with a remote control, or through your smartphone, which is convenient for certain individuals. And even remotely, a third party could turn on or off a TV or change the channel if they so wish. And of course, you could control them through your smart speaker and your smart displays also. And it helps you create more comfortable spaces. And it could even be set up with routines with your smart speaker. For example, you can set it up so that if you tell the smart speakers to switch to relax mode, maybe the lights are dim, their soothing music is played, thermostat set to a more comfortable temperature, or something like the goodnight command. Me, myself, I use a goodnight command at home. And once I'm in bed, I'll tell my smart speaker to good night, and it'll let me know the time. It'll set an alarm for the next morning, let me know what's on my calendar for the next day, make sure that the alarm is armed, and make sure all the locks are locked, and turn off my lights. So just by saying good night, all of that gets taken care of. And of course, these devices help in many, many ways. It's just a matter of how creative you are. They help you communicate with the outside world, of course, through smart displays and webcams and your smartphones. And you could use extra peripherals however you see fit, depending on what your needs are or the client's needs are. And probably the most important thing that I would like to point out is that these devices are not standardized, which it would be very useful if they become standardized. So you have to be sure that you stay within one ecosystem. So for example, the popular ecosystems today, the most popular are the Google Home, aka Google Chromecast, or Google Assistant, and the other set is Amazon products, the Amazon Echo, Amazon Alexa, Fire Sticks, and so on and so forth. Ring doorbell is also part of Amazon. When you buy into one of these ecosystems and you start buying peripherals, you have to make sure that the peripherals are compatible with the ecosystem that you have set up. And my suggestion is, even prior to buying into one ecosystem, try to consider what you want to do and future plans also, and do some research. Check on what products are out there, what would fit your needs and which ones wouldn't fit your needs. And then figure out which ecosystem would support your needs most efficiently. And then buy into a specific ecosystem and make sure that every time you buy another peripheral that is compatible with that ecosystem, because you don't want to bring it home and then it's not compatible, which actually does happen often to many people. So with that, I would like to introduce Ken Smith, who is definitely an expert, and he'll speak a little bit further.
There we go. You can hear me better with the mute off. All right, I appreciate opportunity to speak here today, and just want to hit on a couple of quick things, and I think this was already mentioned earlier. My background actually is pretty diverse. I've been an insurance agent, engineer, a bunch of different things. But when I landed in this particular field of support for individuals with developmental disabilities, I found my true love, and especially in the area of finding technology solutions, both assistive technology and something I'm going to be talking about here today at remote supports. And so I've been very active in the promotion of this particular type of service, and because I've seen the benefits that have come from utilizing it. It's pretty mind-blowing when you start seeing lives change the way I've seen just from the utilization of some of the technology. So, so for those who aren't familiar, traditionally speaking, remote supports, or I'm sorry, support for persons with developmental disabilities, the traditional way of supporting that is through direct supports, and that's either through like a nursing home type setting or ICFs, residential centers, which would be, you can kind of picture like a nursing home for people with developmental disabilities, a large multi-unit living space with common areas. Developmental centers as well, for some of the more challenging situations. Then also more in the residential settings of group homes, where you have, I'd say 4 to 6, maybe 8 people living in an apartment with a common area, or just living independently with residential settings. And so the really unique and cool thing about what we're doing is we're starting to see a fundamental shift in the way supports are provided for people with developmental disabilities. This being the traditional way. And the reason for that is these challenges that we're facing. There just aren't enough people that want to do or have the right mindset or capacity to do direct supports for this special community. They're just like in many areas where we're having shortages of staffing, things that have occurred as a result of COVID and so forth. We were already in this industry, we were already at crisis mode before COVID ever hit. Now it's just, it's extreme the need for the supports that we have, and going the traditional route just isn't cutting it anymore. It has not been for some time. The other reason, or other challenges, you know, people with developmental disabilities, just like us, they have a desire for independence. Just because they have some limitations, whether it's cognitively or physically, does not mean that they don't have that strong desire that all of us have at one point in our lives, where we said, you know what, it's time for me to grow up, and time for me to take chances and do my own thing and make mistakes and learn from my mistakes and so forth and so on. This population has not had a whole lot of opportunity to do that. And so a challenge is that they desire that, and yet they haven't had that opportunity. Next is just the cost of hiring and maintaining the direct support. When we can find them, we can't keep them, or the cost of keeping them, they're, you know, when you're offering them and only able, because it's a Medicaid, in a lot of cases, a Medicaid reimbursed service, the providers are only able to offer a certain amount of wage that may be, depending on where they're at in the country, $10 to $15 an hour. Well, they can go to work at McDonald's and not have to deal with wiping somebody's bottom or something like that. And so it's really, really difficult, just not only finding them and keeping them, but just the cost of that whole process. Hiring somebody today just to have them go through the training process, show up for an hour of work, and then leave. And it's not an exaggeration. This happens every single day in, day out with these provider agencies. They're really struggling, and there's just other challenges that go right along with it. Well, a solution, not the solution, but a solution is something we call remote supports. So if you want to think of remote supports and understand it, you know, that we don't really have a lot of time to go into the details, but look at it as staff at a distance. This is still a human-to-human support service. It just is that the support person, the direct support person, is now a remote support person. They're at a monitoring center somewhere, providing that remote supports, and they're utilizing sensors and cameras and different various items like that to help support that person, not for the purpose of surveillance, but for the purpose of support. And we want to make sure that as people look at this service, that it's understood in a proper way. It is not a surveillance service. Nobody should be sitting there and watching everything somebody does through a camera, following them through the house. That's not what it is. What it is there's certain use cases that the support team is concerned about, and we want to make sure that we are aligned with those use cases, and that we're not intruding on that person in other areas that aren't one of the concerned use cases that are trying to be met with that person's support. And we want to make sure also that the remote caregivers are able to respond to those needs and use cases. So that is a solution. Well, why would you do remote supports? Well, this is going to sound really, really familiar to you. It's because direct support professionals are in short supply. People with developmental disabilities want independence, and because the cost of hiring direct support professionals is just staggering. It just keeps going up and up because of the turnover rate and the other forces that are like the working at McDonald's and so forth, the other wages that are going up, whereas this one's kind of locked in. So where can remote supports be provided? And when I'm saying this, I'm talking in the sense of whether it's a reimbursed service or not. It's surprising the wide range of areas. So the kind of the go-to that everybody looks at remote supports is, how about those overnights where nothing ever happens? This individual sits home, goes to bed, and then they have staff there that is sitting on the couch, in some cases sleeping on the couch. You know, what's the purpose of all that? Does it make sense that somebody's there just in case something happens? And that is kind of the low-hanging fruit of the service. But what was really surprising, so when I first started about 10 years ago in this business, I thought that the doorway was really, really narrow. This service will fit a very specific, narrow group of people, and outside of that, we really don't want to. We don't want to go beyond that. What I've actually found out is it's just the opposite. Is that the service actually fits really, really well for a huge breadth of people, and it's actually a very narrow group of individuals that it does not fit with. And I can't go into a bunch of scenarios and things like that, but if you think about high behavioral issues, somebody who is easily taken advantage of, or somebody who elopes from the home, somebody who lashes out physically at staff or refuses staff at the door, what they may be saying, and they are in a lot of cases, is, I don't want somebody in my face all the time. Leave me alone. And when we put remote supports in place, all of those behavior issues vanish. It's just like magic. And it's a wonderful magic to see, because we also see that these individuals, a large percentage, about 15 to 20% of those individuals, after a few years of remote supports, actually don't even need the remote supports anymore. They've become so independent that all of the what ifs and all the concerns they've been able to dispel. So the challenge for remote supports, though, being adopted is, first and foremost, is the acceptance as a beneficial service. There's several states that have adopted. I'm in Ohio. Ohio, I think, leads the nation in adoption of this service. There's several other states that have it now on their Medicaid waiver program as a reimbursed service. Others allow this service, but it's not a reimbursed item. But there's still a lot to learn, a lot of experience that people need to get in order to feel fully confident that the service is beneficial. I've seen it firsthand, and I know how beneficial it is, and it's just a matter of spreading the word on to that effect. But along with those lines is, I'm one person, and there's only so many vendors in the country. I think that in Ohio we have, I think we have like 10 vendors that operate in Ohio at some capacity. Of those, only 4 of them operate outside of the state of Ohio. And so there just aren't, and there's Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maine, I forget the list, but there's just a huge list of new states that are coming on and adopting this service. So there's just not enough bandwidth within those regional or national carriers to pick up the demand that is happening. And then, so we may look at it and say, well, what if somebody just kind of did it on their own? And there have been agencies that have figured it out and done it on their own. The problem is there's a huge startup cost to do that. And typically in this industry, there's not a high technology competency or knowledge base. Not a whole lot of programmers working for provider agencies. And so there's a huge learning curve, lots of mistakes you make on the way. I've been through it twice, and learned a lot through the process of how not to do things and the right way to do things. Another hurdle is the regulatory process. Even in states that have adopted the service, there's still a lack of understanding as far as approving it as a service, and then even understanding how the service works and when it's permissible and when it isn't. And oftentimes the people writing the rules on this don't really understand the service, and so they write rules that kind of isolate the service from being able to be utilized in their state. And so it's part of the education. And that's the last point here, is there's poor education. There's just not enough knowledge about the service and its benefits. So that's what we're hoping to take care of. So to deal with all of those hurdles that I was just talking about, or several of those hurdles, myself and another person that have had about 23 plus years experience as remote support vendors and providers, is we decided, you know what, wouldn't it make more sense, instead of us trying to, as just a couple of people trying to spread the news and spread the knowledge of this service, why don't we put this service in the hands of the local provider? Nobody understands the needs of that individual that's being served better than the local provider does. So why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we develop the software, the hardware, give them a knowledge base, provide for future development of services and the ongoing support? And so that's what NextGenAT is a tool that a SaaS tool along with some hardware where we provide everything that the local provider agency needs in order to become their own remote support vendor. And that way the support can be local. We can ramp or scale the adoption of this service at a more rapid pace than what it currently is. And we can spread the knowledge because there's more than just a couple people spreading that knowledge. And so with that, that's all I had to say. Here's my contact information if you wanted to get any more information about NextGen. And I believe they're going to be sharing the slides, so I'll just go through these next couple of slides. Here's some reference links to some of the information that was shared today. And lastly, we're going to open it up to any questions. And the questions will be in the chat.
So we did get a couple of questions while William was talking. William, I'll go ahead and turn your mic back on.
Yep.
First question was, you were talking about some of the devices. And the question was if these devices are covered by Access or ALTCS insurance at all. If you have any information on that.
I don't have information on that right now. I think Kang might know a little bit more than I do. But I think it's specific to the device. Some devices are. I definitely know some are, but I can't tell you that all of them are. So it's kind of like a hit and miss because there's hundreds and hundreds of devices out there, so you would have to check.
Yeah, and to kind of jump on that is I'm not familiar with Arizona's rules or anything like that. I haven't seen any insurance carriers that necessarily that cover specifically the assistive tech type of devices. Here in Ohio, it is covered in our waiver as a reimbursed service for people that are on a waiver, but outside of that, I don't have any knowledge.
Do you know if any of the Access websites at all might have that information on those types of devices?
Not off the top of my head because once again, just like Ken said, I'm not aware of Arizona, but I wouldn't know.
Okay.
The Access, I was just going to say that you could use possibly home equity, a home equity loan, and also because they use them for like stair climbers, home equity loans, but also Ohio in their waiver they have technology first in their waiver. Can you go over that, Ken, a little bit?
Yeah, so Ohio, a few years back, they adopted language, again, this is within the DD waiver, that's called technology first. So the idea being that before we start throwing bodies at a problem, before we start putting staff in a home and so forth, that we need to consider technology as a solution. More recently, our current, well, actually our outgoing director, Jeff Davis, announced that they're taking that a step further, and they're basically saying, no, you need to, it has to be ruled out completely as an option before we utilize direct supports or staffing support, just because we've reached a point where there just aren't enough people to go around, as I mentioned earlier.
So we had one other question, and Chris was able to put an answer to it in the link, but the question was, any insights into HIPAA and related compliances for the smart devices? Again, this is when William was talking. We were able to put into the chat, there is a HIPAA final, a PDF. It's a 2-page document that was put out by the National Consortium of Telehealth Resource Centers. If you scroll up in the chat feature, there's a PDF in there that you can download, and it's 2 pages, and it talks about HIPAA and telehealth, a stepwise guide to compliance, and some other information to be aware of. Does anybody else have any other questions that they would like to put into the chat for our speakers today? And again, today's program is being recorded, and when we are done, it will be listed on our website, and that link is in the chat feature as well. And you'll also be getting a, it'll pop up in your window for a survey, and if you would please go ahead and do the evaluation and the survey of today's webinar, and this is what helps guide us in bringing you future webinar series and information. You can let us know what you need to hear about. Again, so we can just give a couple more minutes here if we've got any more questions anybody has. Or if you're having problems finding the download, go ahead and put that message in there. We can figure out another way to get it to you, that PDF on the HIPAA and telehealth. Doesn't look like we have a lot of questions coming in. Do you, Ken and William, do you have any comments, any other comments or final thoughts for our group today?
I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm hoping that Arizona starts adopting this type of service. I haven't heard a whole lot of conversation out of the state, but I really like the weather there. So, you know, I'm open to even if you have nothing to do with it, but you maybe have a friend that runs a provider agency. You know, I'll make a sales call out there. It'd be great. I'll find a reason to do it, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, those of us in Tucson, we like the weather down here as well. William?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending the presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at williammedina@verizon.net. Yeah, I'm with Ken as far as the weather and having an opportunity to go down there. So.
And Mary, do you have any final thoughts for today? You're muted.
Hi. I just wanted to, I don't know, go over the group 3 and group 2 wheelchairs. Like group 2 wheelchairs, like they have captain seats, and they're called POVs, power operated vehicles. It includes scooters, but the technical panel support doesn't regard those as safe as the group 3 wheelchairs, which the group 3 wheelchairs have like 7.5 degree ramp. So like ADA is 4.8, I think, for the ramps. And the 7.5 degrees is for if the person has balance issues or sensory impairments, then they really suggest that 7.5 degrees, you need that for going up and down ramps if you're doing it on a frequent basis. That I just missed that in my presentation.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. We've had quite a few comments that they've appreciated, our participants have appreciated the information. We have just a couple more minutes. If either of you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
William, you want to talk about the reason you have smart home?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I constantly forget to tell people, but I am visually impaired. I have no usable frontal vision, only peripheral vision, and due to that, I'm unable to read text using my eyes. So I'm a techie, so I opt to use technology as the solution for all the obstacles that I face. So all my devices talk, my phone, my computer, my watch. And I use smart devices all over the house for a lot of it just because it's fun. But it's definitely also very useful to me because I'm able to do certain things a lot faster and a lot easier because of the technology. just so that everybody's aware. I do this because I'm a techie, and I'm always looking for something that I could utilize at work for our students. But obviously, a college atmosphere is not the same as a home. When it comes to the home, Ken is definitely the expert. He does this as a business, and he's successful at it. So, you have any questions? He probably could cover the technical side of things and what's appropriate and not appropriate. Me, on the other hand, I could just cover all the options that are out there and unique ways of pairing things together to make them work and make them a little bit more fun.
Appreciate that, William.
Okay. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Please do the evaluation at the end, which will pop up in a separate browser window for you when we end the webinar. And I'd like to go ahead and wish everybody a happy holiday season. Enjoy, relax, and take care of you and yourself and your loved ones. And I think that that'll be it then.
Yep. Merry Christmas.
Take care,
Merry Christmas,
everybody.
everyone.